This Anzac Day, rowers from Australia and New Zealand will unite on indoor rowing machines as a way of honouring our Anzacs. For more on this, we're joined live now by Ian Robson, CEO of Rowing Australia. Ian, tell us about this year's challenge. Rowers will be recording 2,504 metres. Why is that significant?
Well, of course, and Gary, good morning. It's 2504 is symbolic of the 25th of April, and we're delighted to work with our friends and colleagues and Anzac brothers and sisters across the ditch in New Zealand to find a way to honour through rowing the spirit of Gallipoli and the sacrifices that were made by so many.
And take us through the challenge. How will this year be different to previous years?
Well, it's interesting. We only started it last year, and in many respects, Gabrielle, off the back of the story you've just been talking with COVID and the impact of COVID for so many sports. Of course, we weren't able to play, to practice, to train outdoors because of limitations on movement and activity. So the indoor beauty of our sport with indoor rowing and the ergo machine has provided a fantastic platform for us to create new events. And this was one of those events that we started last year with the support of, as I say, our friends at Rowing New Zealand and also the generosity of the Colgan Foundation, who put up a $5,000 donation to be split between the two countries and donations to our respective RSLs. And I think the really pleasing thing is that an initiative that was started in COVID times is now going to endure and really have some important and meaningful significance for our rowing community in the years to come.
Yeah, certainly some beauty into what happened last year, many people making their own ways of honouring our Anzacs. How many rowers do you expect will take part this year?
Well, last year we had just on 1,500 across the two countries, and that in itself, again, gives you some statistical relevance. Only represents about 14% of the loss of life at Gallipoli, and in many respects, Gabrielle, the connection is just so profound from a rowing point of view to the Gallipoli dawn landings, where the method of transportation onto the beaches were rowing boats, and the bravest souls in those boats were the rowers, because they had to sit upright with their backs to the bullets to get the soldiers onto the beach. And about 5,000 members of Australian rowing clubs back in 1914 enlisted and went to war and made the ultimate sacrifice. And so many of those were likely to be at Gallipoli in those boats. So whether you want to take that historical lens and think about it in the context of who might have been in those boats back at those landings to today, and the opportunity for people like myself as an administrator involved in a sport, an elite athlete, a club, school, community-based athlete, or frankly anyone who's in a gym, the ability to jump on, punch out 2,504 metres and know that you've made a small contribution in finding your own way to mark respect on what is such a hugely symbolic day for our nation.
What a great initiative. So rowers, they're encouraged to log their metres online, and they're also encouraged to make donations?
They certainly are, and we're very conscious of trying to do our bit to recognise and support the very worthy work of the RSL, of course, all year. But Anzac Day is the time where we, as a nation, we focus our attention, and dawn services and football matches and other things are, of course, now part of the fabric and the landscape of the day and how we celebrate it as a nation. And we're hoping that we can now place the indoor rowing element as another key component about how we can all find a way to make that gesture of recognition and symbolic support to acknowledge the fallen.
Absolutely. And while I've got you here, I've got to ask you about the Olympics. How's the Australian rowing team placed for the upcoming Olympics and the Paralympics?
Yeah, it's obviously been a very tough time for the athletes. The bad news last year was that the Games were postponed. The good news was that they were postponed and not cancelled. And it's been an unprecedented 5-year preparation for our athletes, and we're so proud of how they've demonstrated all of their resilience, their dedication and commitment to the work that needs to be done to give us the best possible preparation. So we currently have 8 crews qualified for the Olympics and 2 for the Paralympics. We've got another 4 crews trying to go through the final qualification regatta to get to Tokyo, and another crew on the para side. If we could get a full complement of 12 at the Olympics and 3 at the para, that would be extraordinary and outstanding. And for the crews that have already qualified, we think we've got some really, really solid medal opportunities and chances, certainly based on the performances over the cycle to date. our women's 4 are the current world champions, and they probably lead the pack as probably our strongest medal contender at the moment.
Well, all of Australia will be behind our rowers. Ian Robson, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my pleasure.